It is a world that's by definition behind closed doors, but on the outside there are increasing questions about who's being let out of prison early, under a scheme aimed at easing overcrowding.
All we're doing is firefighting and tinkering with the edges.
This is one man who knows. We're protecting his identity because he works for the probation service. It's their job to process prisoners that are deemed fit for release. But Ben, not his real name, has concerns.
These people could be domestic violence perpetrators. They could be high risk to the public as we assess them. Just because they're not doing a long sentence doesn't mean that people are not, deemed to be a high risk in the public domain, and we wouldn't necessarily have time to put in place safeguards, do any checks.
Today, a Prime Minister who leads the self-proclaimed party of law and order under pressure.
So will he at least guarantee that none of the criminals he is instructing prisoners to release early are considered high risk?
Mr. Speaker, there are strict eligibility criteria in place with exclusions based on public safety, and no one will be put on the scheme if they were deemed a threat to public safety.
The Prime Minister said today that there are strict criteria for this scheme and that no one is on the scheme if they're a risk to public safety. Is he being honest?
Well, he's probably not aware of how that system works. I'm aware recently of at least 2 people who've come out who we assess as high risk, but they've come out into the early release scheme.
And an official report into a prison in East Sussex, published earlier this week, found the same. An inspection at HMP Lewis found an example of a prisoner that was released despite being a risk to children and having a history of stalking and domestic abuse. And today, another emergency measure to relieve capacity in our prisons confirmed. Operation Early Dawn will see bail hearings at courts delayed, keeping defendants in police cells until prison beds become available, causing confusion for lawyers.
It's like administrative chaos. It's all falling apart. So it's having a big impact on the running of the courts. But there is this unanswered question about how they're going to manage risk, and we haven't seen the answer to that.
The government say the early release prison scheme is to ease short-term pressure on prisons, to free up space for the most dangerous of offenders. But questions about exactly who they are and how temporary the pressures will be. Mollie Malone, Sky News.